for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, two conversations. Up first, are white conservatives raising a generation of snowflakes? We'll talk to journalist David Love about his provocative new essay at the top of hour two. On the B side of hour two,
This has been absolutely beautiful, you guys. I can't believe it's come to an end. You guys will always be in my heart, and I sincerely appreciate it. No words can describe how I feel about you guys. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. God, I love you guys, and I love you guys. And my family. To my family, my wife Vanessa, our daughters Natalia and Gianna, thank you guys for all your sacrifice. For all the hours I spent in the gym working and training, and Vanessa, you holding down the family the way that you have. I can't, there's no way that I can thank you enough for that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And what can I say? Mamba out.
Kobe Bean Bryant would have turned 45 today. Veteran sports writer Sean Devaney joins us for a conversation about the Lakers' star enduring legacy. On the B side of hour two, we'll celebrate what would have been Kobe Bryant's 45th birthday. In our third hour, noted Judge LaDoris Cordell sounds off on a number of trending legal topics, including, listen to this now, including a lawsuit recently filed against a venture capital fund that supports Black women-owned businesses. The lawsuit was filed by the same guy behind the successful Supreme Court attack on affirmative action. His name is Edward Blum, and you'll hear about what he's up to now and what he hopes to accomplish with this new lawsuit against this Black women-owned entity when Judge LaDoris Cordell joins us today in hour three. In this first hour, though, two more conversations. On the B side of this hour, why can't the Ukrainians seem to win this war against Russia after more than $113 billion in aid. And that's just from the U.S., your tax dollars. What about all the other countries around the globe that are supporting this war where Russia and Ukraine are concerned? Is it time then to pull the plug? Phyllis Bennis, director of the new Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies, joins us on the backside of this hour to talk about why they can't seem to win and what we do now, or as Dr. King might say, where do we go from here? That said, let's commence today's show talking politics with the Washington bureau chief for The Nation magazine, Chris Lehmann. Chris, good to have you back. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Tavis. How are you?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well. I'm delighted, as always, to be in dialogue with you, although I wish we were talking about a few other topics. But this one just won't seem to go away. Yeah, it just won't seem to go away. My calendar reads Wednesday.
No, I think I was on your show during the very first Trump indictment up in New York way back when. And on it goes.
You're right. You were here on the first indictment. Here we are 4 indictments in, and you're back. Yeah. And the indictments keep coming. I'm not even sure we're done with all these indictments yet. So you'll be back again on indictment 5, 6, or 7. Who knows? That said, we'll get to Trump. There's a bit of Trump news here that we'll get to in just a moment here. There's Trump news every day, of course. We were on the eve of him turning himself in to be booked and released tomorrow on a $200,000 bail. That happens tomorrow in Atlanta. We'll get to that later in this conversation. But I want to start with the obvious. Today's Wednesday, my calendar says, which means that tonight is the official kickoff of the presidential debate season, the first debate. 8 Republicans have made the stage tonight. Let me start with a broad question. We'll narrow as we move through this hour. What are you expecting tonight?
Well, the debate is largely being hyped as kind of Ron DeSantis' last shot to get momentum in a primary season that actually hasn't officially started yet. Mm-hmm. I think it's maybe already too late. I think the more voters see of Ron DeSantis, even Republican voters, they are repelled. I don't know that having sustained exposure on a national stage is going to help that core problem for Ron DeSantis. And of course, the big, not to always revert to discussions of Trump, but, Trump is skipping this debate.
Right.
So that makes it largely, I think there are 2 narratives to look for. If, like me, you have the misfortune of watching tonight's debate. One is kind of, who is positioning to be Trump's running mate, potentially.
Right.
It will also be interesting. The other narrative is the redemption of Fox News, which settled that $787 million lawsuit that Dominion Voting Systems brought.
Right.
Earlier this year. They have taken a lot of credibility hits. I think it will be interesting to see whether, the debate hosts, Martha McCallum and Brett Baer, will ask the candidates on stage, do they intend to pardon Donald Trump if he's convicted? Do they believe that the 2020 election was legitimate? That would be an interesting turn of events.
Let me.
I am of the opinion every Republican always should be asked those questions.
Yeah. Let me press the pause button for a second here. When we come forward, we'll come to that issue. What kinds of questions we think are going to be asked tonight? Will they have the courage to ask anything serious or credible? And whether or not Fox News will generate some sort of get some of their integrity back, as it were, given the point you've just made. A lot more to talk about with Chris Lehmann of The Nation magazine when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What does access mean?
Access means owning a home.
Access means growing my business.
Access means building generational wealth. No matter your goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Programs and initiatives provide the tools and resources to help you reach them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, life doesn't stop when cancer starts. After diagnosis, treatment is vital. But for some, just getting there, to appointments, chemo, or radiation, is a major challenge. You can change that. Volunteer to give rides with the American Cancer Society Road to Recovery program. Driving for a few hours of your day can make a life-saving difference for someone with cancer. Visit cancer.org/drive to learn more.
Hi, it's Tavis Smiley. KBLA Talk 1580 is inviting you to join us on Saturday, September 16th, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. for our very first economic empowerment event for the community. This event is free and is powered by Caltrans. We're doing this in association with Rambo House, and here's Rambo to tell you more.
Contracts. I'm going to say it again for all of us small business owners out there. Contracts. Rambo House, KBLA, Tavis, me. Oh my God, this is going to be massive. I truly thank Caltrans for giving us the opportunity to focus on contracts. Listen, that's what it's all about to be a small business in LA. That's how we hire our own. That's how we expand our community is contracts. KBLA1580.com is for you to have a seat at our contracts-focused event. Contract Ready does it again. We had over 900 last time. So you guys know how exciting this is. And if you just think that you want to get into contracts and you're close to it, bring your friends out for September 16th at the Marriott Hotel. Listen, you know where to register. KBLA1580.com. Come see me. I can't wait to see you. Let's do it, Tavis.
So be sure to go to KBLA1580.com for all the details. We'll see you Saturday, September 16th.
Hey, I am D.L. Hughley, host of the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, heard weekdays from 2 to 4 exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. I promise to make you think a little, but laugh a whole lot more. So tune in to the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show 2 to 4 only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Carson, get back!
Hey, I am Jasmine Carson, LSU Women's Basketball National Champion. I had to up my game, and this time I upped my intimate grooming routine too. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area. Featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and a skincare regimen that is dermatologist tested, Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about the full regimen of products.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation with Chris Lehmann, who is the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for The Nation magazine, talking all things politics for the first half hour of today's program, and then we'll jump from there. Chris, a couple things you said already I want to come back to right quick, watching our time here. Number one, I love your choice of words. You are an all-star, a brilliant writer, so you choose your words very carefully. When you say that the more people get exposed, Republican voters that is, we know how the rest of us feel, but the more Republicans get exposed to Ron DeSantis, the more repelled they are. Why do you think that is? And I raise that in part because the policies that he's been advancing are animating this campaign. I mean, his so-called anti-woke agenda, all the nonsense he's doing in Florida, that stuff is working, as it were. Other states, other politicians are taking his lead. So his agenda seems to be catching hold to some degree inside that party, but his personal fortunes, his aspirations to be president seem not to be taking off, to your point. So I'm trying to figure out why you think that dichotomy exists and why people, to your point, are repelled the more they learn about this guy.
Well, if you've ever seen him speak, the man has a pretty acute charisma deficit. He just does not interact naturally around other human beings. And, that is something that you just need in mass politics. And he does have this, detailed agenda. He runs basically on the idea that he's a more competent version of Trump. I will say that the anti-CRT, anti-woke agenda is not proving as popular either as DeSantis has banked. In the 2022 cycle, the Republicans went all in on those moral panics. And, it was only, frankly, due to the incompetence of the New York Democratic Party that the Republicans won a majority in the House. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that these are winning issues, and they haven't been winning issues in a lot of state and local races since the midterms. So that is also a problem. I think DeSantis' agenda is even starting to prove less popular in Florida.
Yeah.
He's got this part of the problem is he has a total lockdown politically on Florida. He has a supermajority in the legislature. He's stacked the courts there with cronyist ideological appointees. So he's been operating in this bubble where he has all this power, and I don't think it translates well.
Yeah.
And that combined with his, lack of any sort of relatable affect on the campaign trail is proving to be kind of a disaster.
So you mentioned, secondly, you mentioned a running mate. We'll be watching tonight. Those who can stand it will be watching to see who's trying to make their play to be his running mate. But that let me split the baby, as it were, and raise two issues connected to that. One is who we think is best positioning themselves right now to be the running mate, assuming that Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee, and most of us believe that. So one question is who's positioning themselves to be the running mate. The other question is who we think can seize the spotlight from Trump tonight to the extent that can happen. We know his Tucker Carlson conversation will be broadcast at the same time, but is there anybody you think that can seize the spotlight from Trump? To your point, DeSantis seems not to be able to do that. So there are two questions here. Let's start with them one at a time. Who do we think is best positioning himself, herself, to be the running mate right now?
Well, Vivek Ramaswamy has been kind of gently surging in the polls as DeSantis has been flailing. And I think in a lot of ways he's the kind of character that Trump would be attracted to. He's a private sector, rich guy.
Yeah.
And is also, he's also all in on the anti-woke rhetoric. But he may be too much like Trump, which is to say he's come out with a series of foreign policy statements over the past week that are to nutty. I mean, he was he was taped in an interview speculating about whether federal agents were involved in the 9/11 terror attacks. So this is the eternal question of are there positions that are too crazy for the Donald Trump era Republican Party?
What about the black U.S. senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott?
Tim Scott, is also picked up some traction in the polls, and I think he would like to project as a kinder, gentler alternative to Trump in some ways. But this is the problem that all of these candidates are all boxed in by Trump's rabid election denialism. They can't, it's the same problem DeSantis has in miniature. There's no way to navigate a position outside of Trumpism in the Republican Party because Trump has such a stranglehold on the base.
Yeah.
And so Scott is kind of parroting, Trump applause lines. And, it's the same dilemma of if you're going to just mimic Donald Trump, the real thing is right there for Republican voters.
Well,
I think.
No,
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. When you say the real thing is right there, there's a question to be asked about how present Donald Trump is, even when he's absent. How do you read that?
Yeah. Yeah, he's the elephant in the room, as it were.
Yeah.
The elephant not. Yes. I think, the real question, panning back from this primary cycle is, does the Republican Party have a future without Donald Trump? And if it doesn't, it may not have a future, period. Donald Trump has presided over three, basically losing election cycles for the Republican Party. And I don't predict because that's, pure folly, but it does seem, with, the prospect of a convicted and potentially even jailed major party nominee, that is not an appealing pitch to make to independent voters or swing state voters. Donald Trump is everything about the Republican Party is about Donald Trump. And that's a recipe for failure, frankly.
Let me circle back right quick. It occurs to me to ask this question now, and so I will. Let me circle back to the running mate conversation we were just having a moment ago, because this debate tonight is in part about positioning yourself perhaps to be his number two. Mike Pence, of course, is still in this thing. He ain't going nowhere, but he's in it, and he'll be on stage tonight.
Yeah.
And it occurs to me to ask why anybody, frankly, would want to be a number two to Donald Trump when you see and now know what Mike Pence had to go through. Like, why would you even want that job? It's one thing to want to be the nominee. I ain't mad at you, and I get it. And I'm not even asking this question. I understand how power works. If you can be number two and get a hold of the ring of power, then maybe you'll do anything to get that ring. So I understand that. I ain't stuck on stupid. Yet my question, I think, is still pertinent, which is why anybody watching what he went through would want to be a number two to Donald Trump. I mean, he punished this guy.
Yeah, well, this is a total mystery about Donald Trump's whole life and career. Is he demands total loyalty from everyone in his orbit, and he turns on them on a dime viciously. So it is a little like watching Charlie Brown in the football to see all of these people, clamor to up to Donald Trump, thinking they're going to outwit him or get what they want out of this transactional arrangement. And they all end up in exactly the same position. They end up like Michael Cohen, his fixer, who wound up going to jail, for arranging the Stormy Daniels experiment. So
I thought the other day, Chris, I mean, to your point, I thought the other day when Ms. Willis brought those indictments in Atlanta, all the persons, I mean, you can start with Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, run the list. But all these sycophants who were so insistent, who were so willing to be a part of his circle, he's taking everybody down with him. I mean, the closer you get to this guy, the more radioactive you are. And again, that's what's informing my question about why you'd want to be in that sort of radioactive space. When he gets in trouble, he takes everybody down with him.
No, it is really true. And I think everyone just thinks to themselves, well, this time it'll be different. Like I'll hit upon the magic formula and charm the monster. And it literally never happens. You go back through all of Trump's career in the private sector as well. It's the same. It's stunning. It's a reminder that, I think it's always important to remember that Trump's great mentor when he came of age was Roy Cohn, the utterly ruthless and unscrupulous McCarthy-era enforcer who taught Donald Trump never to pay his bills, who taught him always to take your, political opponents and business rivals to court and just, run them into the ground. And that is, we are watching, Donald Trump is like the reincarnation of Roy Cohn in the 21st century.
Yep. You mentioned Fox News earlier. Just watching my time. I got about 5 minutes left in this dialogue, which I appreciate your time. You mentioned Fox News. So Donald Trump has made more news, as he always does. He has now told certain people that he is skipping the debate tonight, to your earlier point, to punish Fox and to punish the Murdochs. Those are his words. He's punishing Fox. He's punishing the Murdochs. We sort of knew that. But again, Donald Trump always wants you to hear it directly from him. So now he's basically said it publicly. How do you read that connected to whether or not Fox News can get any of its credibility back tonight by hosting this debate?
Well, he's trying to get back at Fox News by having an interview with Tucker Carlson, who was famously fired in the wake of the Dominion settlement by Fox. So it is this bid, sort of like True Social was, to create a rival information ecosystem to, in that case, Twitter, in this case, to Fox News. And frankly, Trump just doesn't have the discipline, I don't think, to follow through with any of this stuff. I think, there will be some rubbernecking, but the fact of the matter is, like, Tucker Carlson has this arrangement with Twitter to host his content, and he has not been doing great numbers under it. So I don't, I do think it is, again, it's the basic problem of Trump can do whatever he wants because he has so much power in the party. He can, take his ball and go home when you've got a 40-point lead or whatever it is in the polls. Things like debate don't really matter.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you two more questions. Let me ask you two more questions right quick, Chris, if I can. Number one, where policy is concerned, we haven't really talked about policy. My sense is what America is going to see tonight on stage are 8 people whose policy positions are just completely outrageous and certainly out of step with most Americans. Might that do this party in tonight? Period. Hard stop.
Well, no. I mean, I think there, our speaking of information ecosystems, ours are so badly broken that, there's a whole legion of outlets that just parrot what are basically lies and urban myths and folklore about the way things are in this country. So, there was an Iowa poll that found that, the leading issues for Republican voters are things like stronger border enforcement at a time when under Biden, there was a big forecast when Biden retooled some of the border policies that there was going to be this, wave of undocumented immigrants in the country, and it never happened.
Yeah.
There are obviously still issues at the border. Everything is just being blown out of proportion for the sake of sensationalist clicks and eyeballs and all that. Similarly, the woke issue did pull high in Iowa. And again, it's, there is no there.
Yeah, I got it. I love how you framed it when you called them moral panics. I think there are going to be many moral panics that we're going to see.
Yeah, that is, that is what the Republican Party does. It doesn't do policy.
No,
that's what's frustrating.
Well, we'll see those moral panics tonight on stage. 60 seconds. 60 seconds left here, and really, this is more time than we actually need for this. But I got 60 seconds. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, said in an interview yesterday that the GOP could launch impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden when the House reconvenes after Labor Day. It could be happening. Your thoughts?
Well, speaking about not doing policy, right? I mean, this is what the House majority is doing with its power in Congress. And it's just, again, all driven, to sort of appease the Trump base of the party. Like, as far as I can tell, they just want to impeach Joe Biden for being Joe Biden.
Yeah.
There is no underlying, there is no credible allegation unless you twist some of the Hunter Biden nonsense, and it is not into all out of recognition. So it is more theater masquerading as lawmaking.
Yeah, well, speaking of theater, circus theater, tonight, 8 persons on stage. Get ready, brace yourself for the moral panics that are to come, and brace yourself after Labor Day for perhaps an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden, as Chris Lehmann brilliantly said, for just being Joe Biden. I digress. Chris Lehmann is D.C. Bureau Chief of The Nation magazine. Chris, good to have you back on. As always, we'll do it again soon, my friend.
Excellent. Thank you, Tavis.
Thank you, sir. Why can't the Ukrainians seem to win this war? $115 billion in of our money. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Parents, we know we can't protect our kids from everything. Eventually, they're going to bump their heads or scrape their knees. But we can protect them from 6 types of cancer. HPV, or human papillomavirus, is a common, preventable virus that can cause cancer later in life. The HPV vaccine prevents human papillomavirus and all the cancers it can cause. The American Cancer Society recommends getting your sons and daughters the HPV vaccine starting at age 9 to protect them later in life.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The number of people confirmed dead in Lahaina remains at 115, but the number of people considered missing is back to about 1,100. That's according to the FBI's official list, which fell to about 850 people earlier this week. Maui County will soon release the names of missing people in hopes of finding them alive. Some are listed with first names only. African-American James Harden will have to pay up for his comments about 76ers president Daryl Morey. The NBA fined Harden $100,000 for calling him a liar and refusing to work in the same organization as him. The league said the current 76ers star guard indicated he would not perform services called for under his player contract unless traded to another team. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
The San Bernardino Freeway is a mess in El Monte. 10 westbound at Garvey Avenue solo crash has taken out the 2 left lanes. You're on the brakes from Grand Avenue. Meanwhile, the left lane blocked on the 10 eastbound at Garvey Avenue because a tire flew over from the westbound side and hit a car. Going to the Riverside Freeway in Anaheim, 2-car injury wreck 91 westbound before Kramer LaSalle. This is in the number 3 lane, middle lane towards your right. You are busy from Imperial Highway.
Calling all night owls, Buffalo Wild Wings is open late. Fill up on some tasty apps with an ice cold tall beer starting at $4. Late night food and drinks start at $4 from 10 till close at B-Dubs. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void where prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right. Everything you earned doubled. The cash back from trips, restaurants, all doubled. Seriously, though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. 13 years after the NCAA shut him down and took his Heisman Trophy, former USC star Reggie Bush is hitting back with a lawsuit. Bush is suing the NCAA for defamation of character. Bush has scheduled a press conference Wednesday morning at the Coliseum to discuss his lawsuit. Bush claims the NCAA made false allegations about him in 2021 when the organization announced it was not reinstating his collegiate records or returning his Heisman Trophy. The NCAA reported that Bush had a pay-for-play arrangement when he was at USC from 2002 to 2005. Bush was also accused of receiving improper benefits, including a mortgage-free home for his family. To this day, Bush has not denied that he accepted improper benefits from an alleged USC booster. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Are you looking to steer your career in a new direction? Driving for the Culver City Bus can be your ticket to a long-lasting career with excellent benefits and paid training. Culver City Bus is looking for customer service and safety-minded bus operators to join the growing team. Culver City Bus offers on-the-job paid training, uniform allowance, and health benefits. Culver City Bus are now even putting their money in your pocket with a one-time $2,500 sign-on bonus. Let us connect you with an essential service job. If you enjoy driving, seek real opportunities for career advancement, and passionate about making a difference in your community, then we invite you to join the team. Start your journey by submitting an application at culvercity.org/job. For more information, visit culvercitybus.com or call call the live customer service operator at 310-253-6500. Again, 350-253-6500.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I am pleased to be joined by our friend Phyllis Bennis, who is an author, activist, and director of the new Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. I invited her on just for a brief conversation here about why these Ukrainians cannot seem to win this war. We've already given them almost $115 billion of our tax money. That's just us. That's not including other nations around the world, and they can't seem to win this war. The question is whether or not now is the time to pull the plug, and if so, then what? Phyllis Bennis, good to have you back. How are you today?
Very well, Tavis. Great to be with you.
Good to have you on. Good to hear your voice. Let me just start with the question I posed a moment ago. Why can't the Ukrainians seem to win this war? I was reading a piece just yesterday, a couple pieces yesterday, in fact, about some comments by some of our military generals that they're not waging war in the right way. They have their soldiers in the wrong places, et cetera, et cetera. It was sort of one of those in the weeds articles about why they aren't winning. But again, I think the American people are starting to ask this question now. $115 billion in, why can't they win this thing?
You know, I think in a sense, Tavis, it's an understandable question given the amount of money, of our tax money that's going to Ukraine, about two-thirds of which is for the military. There is some which I would support that goes for humanitarian purposes as well, but we're somewhere over $70 billion just this last year and a half that's gone directly to the military. But I think, posing it as why can't the Ukrainians do this kind of implies that if it was our war, we would win it. The U.S. hasn't done so well winning wars around the world. Let's be clear about that. But I think the issue here is the nature of this war. The Russians, who of course started this war, are dug in. It's old-fashioned trench warfare. And essentially a lot of the equipment that the U.S. and others are sending is stuff that requires a long period of training, which the Ukrainians haven't had. It seems to me the Ukrainians have fought very bravely and very well for a nation that has not been at war for a long time and that had to go to war suddenly, if you will. But I think it goes to both the military part and the fact that the U.S. position, we will provide whatever is needed for as long as it takes, is something that gives the Ukrainian government the ability to keep saying, we're just going to keep fighting whether or not there's any chance to actually win. The positions that the Ukrainians have taken for what would a peace agreement look like for them includes a number of perfectly legitimate demands, but things that are not going to be reached without massive levels of negotiations and diplomacy and compromise on all sides. Saying that they will not talk about any kind of peace talks until Russia agrees to give back the land they have seized is legal under international law, but it's not realistic as the basis for certainly a ceasefire. No one is yet willing to talk about even a ceasefire, which doesn't equate to what a final peace agreement would look like. A final peace agreement is going to be very, very complicated. We'll have to engage with giving back some of the land that Russia has seized, but probably won't involve giving back the Crimea, for example. There's going to be questions about what is the final arrangement. But in the meantime, it certainly is realistic to say there should be a call for a ceasefire. Stop the killing. Stop the killing. We just saw in the headlines yesterday of the New York Times, the lead story about the number just of military casualties is up to almost 500,000 on the two sides. More Russian than Ukrainian. But it's as the Ukrainians have already lost more soldiers in this war of a year and a half than the U.S. lost in all the years it fought in Vietnam.
I was going there, and so I'm glad you did. You are not just brilliant, but you're prophetic and prescient as well. That 500,000 mark struck me when I saw that headline, that 500,000 people, soldiers, are dead or injured.
That's just the soldiers. Exactly. That's not even talking about the civilian casualties who are in the thousands as well.
So we're talking above 500,000 people who've been killed or injured, maimed. in this process, and that number, in many ways, obviously, is much more striking. The human casualty is much more striking even than the $115 billion. I take that, and yet, when it comes to any other issue, I'm thinking now about our domestic agenda. When it comes to homelessness, when it comes to, just run the list. Any number of poverty, income inequality, economic immobility, public assistance. I could do this all day long. When it comes to any other issue, politicians, both on the left and the right, will say without any equivocation or hesitation whatsoever, we don't have a blank check. Right. We don't have an open pocketbook. We don't have an open wallet here. On any other issue, that's the kind of response that you get. That does not seem to be the response on this issue. I'm not naive, but tell me why not.
It's absolutely right, and it's on both parties. It's across the mainstream media, from Fox News to the New York Times to virtually all of them are supporting the idea of unlimited military support to a war that now even some U.S. generals are beginning to whisper they recognize cannot be won militarily like this. The Ukrainian counteroffensive that has been underway now for months is bogged down. The Russians are carrying out a kind of old-fashioned trench warfare that has led to something like 20% of all these new weapons are now unusable. They've been destroyed, not because they've been attacked by Russia in many cases, but because they've sunk in the mud. They're the wrong kind of weapons for that kind of territory. It simply isn't working. And the dangers, Tavis, you and I talked about that very early in the war. Those dangers have not gone away. The dangers of the impact on the global south in terms of food and fuel scarcity across the world and massive cuts in humanitarian aid because countries are now giving all their money to Ukraine. The massive escalation in militarization of Europe and around the world, in fact, the expansion of NATO with greater U.S. control, looking to greater potential military problems around the world that are going to emerge as we look at the possibility of a Pacific version of NATO taking place with the U.S. and Japan and South Korea, and the question of nuclear weapons. The danger of a nuclear exchange in this war remains as grave as it was on day one when Russia illegally invaded. And we can't simply put that aside and say, well, we can't let Russia use their nuclear threats as a way of pressuring. Well, the reality is you have to take that into account. You have to take that into account. And that's why calling for a ceasefire, it's so important that countries in the global south, we saw the leadership of 6 African countries that met with both the Ukrainian and Russian leadership. More recently, there's been talk of other combinations of leaders around the world, the dream team, perhaps, of the leaders of South Africa and Brazil, Lula and Ramaphosa, would be, in my view, a potential possibility for negotiating terms for a ceasefire. All of these possibilities are out there, but as long as the U.S. and its allies continue to say, we will send all the weapons you need for as long as it takes, for as long as you want. We will fight, they say, to the last Ukrainian. And the result is Ukrainians are dying in these enormous numbers. And while polls that we hear about say every Ukrainian we talk to says they think they can win and they're going to fight till the last soldier, I'm not sure that in the context of a nation at war, and President Zelensky has been brilliant at mobilizing his country to support this war, in that context, I don't know that people are so confident saying to a pollster, whoever they might be, that they're not so sure about this war anymore. But I imagine there's got to be people in Ukraine that are thinking, all I want is for my children to be safe. If we have to give up a little bit of territory, that's unfortunate and it's illegal and it's a reality, but if it keeps my children safe, I would do that. I think there's more of those voices than we're being allowed to hear.
Yeah. When we come forward, I want to probe a bit more of this notion of a ceasefire that you've raised a couple of times now, number one. Number two, I started this conversation by asking, why can't they win this war? The truth of the matter is, almost 2 years in, I don't know what winning looks like anymore. I don't know what winning means. I'm going to give Phyllis Bennis a chance to sort of unpack or, frankly, critique my use of the word winning at the outset of onset of this conversation. And it occurs to me, given that we have this presidential debate tonight, Republican debate, first of the season, we're in that period now where we're headed toward the 2024 presidential race. And I'm wondering if Joe Biden will ultimately pay a price for this, because there are more and more Republican voices now, believe it or not, more Republicans saying we need to pull out of this. Now is the time to pull the plug. My sense is that may turn into not just a few voices, but a chorus. If it does turn into a Republican chorus, does Joe Biden pay a price for that? Will he have to back up himself because he's catching heat from Republicans about getting out of Ukraine? We'll talk about it when we come forward with Phyllis Bennis on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. MC Light for AARP. Hip-hop, the cultural phenomenon that took New York by storm in 1973, is celebrating 50 years of rocking mics and crowds. Whether you're a ride-or-die hip-hop head or simply curious about its origins, check out the latest issue of AARP the magazine. It celebrates this incredible milestone with a featured story brimming with fun hip-hop facts and history. Head over to aarp.org/Black Community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/Black Community.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, in downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Are you looking for a tax preparation firm that understands the unique financial challenges of African American business owners? Then look no more. Wealth Management Financial Advisors can prepare and file your individual and business taxes. They're committed to providing their clients with the best possible service. See how they make the greatest impact on your taxes. Find them at wealthmanagementlb.com or call them at 562-427-8877. That's 562-427-8877.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
Phyllis Bennis, I want to offer you the opportunity, not that I need to press you to do this, but to critique my use of the word winning. Take it away.
You know, Tavis, in this context, I think we have to start with the origins of the war. This was a war that was provoked by the U.S. and its allies, but was initiated and carried out illegally by Russia. Both those things are true. This was an illegal invasion. It was not unprovoked. But you can answer provocation in all kinds of ways, and the way the Russians chose to answer it was illegal in this invasion. What we're looking at in terms of who defines what winning looks like, for Ukraine, their requirements are essentially the return of all the land that has been seized by Russia going back to 2014, meaning including the Crimea, for Russia to pay full reparations for the damage done in the war, and for Russian officials to be held accountable in a war crimes trial. Now, according to international law, all those things are absolutely legitimate demands. But the notion that they will not consider a ceasefire until they have achieved that means permanent war. So there's the sense of winning, meaning at least those three things. There's a 10-point plan that Zelensky has put forward about what a peace agreement would look like that outlines all of this in more detail, but it's essentially those three things: the return of all the land, Russia paying full reparations, and war crimes trials for Russian officials. That's something you fight for in negotiations. Mm-hmm. Saying that there's not going to be a ceasefire until we get that is the recipe for permanent war. And unfortunately, the role the U.S. and its allies have played, going back to the conversation that was held by the foreign minister of the UK at the time, Boris Johnson, on behalf of NATO, going back some months and months to the early stages of the war, when there were negotiations about to go on. It seemed it was going to go forward, and he essentially went and told the Ukrainians, don't negotiate now, we'll provide everything you need for as long as it takes. And that's what started this whole notion that there can be no negotiations because there's no reason for them. There's no reason for Ukraine to say, we're prepared to negotiate, because the U.S. is behind them saying, we'll provide whatever you want for as long as it takes, without defining any limits.
Yep. I received that, and I wanted to just give Phyllis a chance to just sort of define what winning looks like for both sides, and she's done that brilliantly. When we come forward in our remaining moments with Phyllis Bennis, we'll talk about the politics, the presidential politics of Joe Biden continuing to write these checks to the Ukrainians. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What does access mean?
Access means owning a home. Access means growing my business.
Access means building generational wealth. No matter your goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Programs and initiatives provide the tools and resources to help you reach them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, life doesn't stop when cancer starts. After diagnosis, treatment is vital. But for some, just getting there, to appointments, chemo, or radiation, is a major challenge. You can change that. Volunteer to give rides with the American Cancer Society Road to Recovery program. Driving for a few hours of your day can make a life-saving difference for someone with cancer. Visit cancer.org/drive to learn more.
I'm MC Light for Hip Hop Heritage, celebrating 50 years of hip hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. From its earliest days of show-stopping, DJs and MCs cold rocking parties, to its dominance on the music charts, hip-hop has been the biggest game changer in American music, and I mean ever. And it's not just about the music. It's how we celebrate, how we communicate, how we continue to elevate. Check out Cadillac and see how our swag has evolved and continues to revolve around the world.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
From Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This first debate tonight, Phyllis Bennis, I suspect will feature and focus mostly on domestic policy, but there's always a chance that some international stuff may creep in. And if it does, top of the list, I would assume, would be the war in Ukraine. I raise that to ask whether or not, as we continue to roll through this presidential election season, the president is going to get squeezed more and more by these Republicans who start raising this chorus that we need to get out of Ukraine. And by get out, I mean, of course, stop writing these blank checks, giving Ukraine a blank check. What's your read of the politics on this?
You know, Tavis, I work for a nonprofit, so we, of course, don't take positions on specific candidates. But looking at it analytically, it seems to me that the first critics of the endless level of military support that was going to Ukraine actually came from mainly Democrats in the Progressive Caucus, who felt so much pressure when they did issue a letter to President Biden urging not even an end so far to the military support, but to add to that military support a demand for a ceasefire and start to push for a ceasefire. And they withdrew that letter, which I found an unfortunate reality. We are seeing clearly among Republicans a kind of partisan approach, similarly saying, only similar in the sense that they're saying that there should be either a diminution or maybe a full halt to the military aid. But I think the big difference when we look at it is on the Progressive Caucus side, they're linking it to the need for funds for things like jobs and health care and education. The Republican side is simply saying, we should stop supporting it because we should stop supporting all our allies. It's a kind of isolationism that is, in fact, quite dangerous, even in a situation where it might lead to a temporary reduction in military assault somewhere, when it's based on the idea that the U.S., which is by far the most powerful and the wealthiest country in the history of the world, that we somehow have no responsibility to the rest of the world, and we only have responsibility to people in this country. And for many of them, clearly we only have responsibility for white country, so it goes pretty far. I think we have to be very careful not to assume that because both may promote the same tactic at a given moment, that they somehow come to it from the same vantage point. They clearly don't, and that's very evident when you look at how they talk about this war.
In the 90 seconds I have left, then, I want to link these two things. Whatever pressure Joe Biden is going to be under in the months to come as we move through this presidential election season, from the Republicans demanding that he stop giving, again, this unlimited aid to the Ukrainians, what would it take right quick for Joe Biden to take more seriously your issue, your solution of a ceasefire?
You know, I think public opinion changing, things like letters to the editor, call-in radio shows, all those things matter. Joe Biden is a politician like others who's accountable to the voters as he's looking ahead to this election. He's got to be looking at what are the issues that people care about, and I think the people that are looking for more support, we saw incredible impact of the kind of support from the federal government during the pandemic's first 2 years, things like the child tax credit that led to cutting in half the levels of child poverty in this country. And then suddenly it's over because the 2-year period had ended, and we claimed that the pandemic was about to end. And the result is children are dropping back into poverty in huge numbers. And when people say, well, we need to renew that, we need more money for to eliminate child poverty, well, we're spending $70 billion on the military support for Ukraine, and people are saying, well, maybe that's not the best use of those monies. Maybe there's another way to keep us safer, like keeping our kids healthy, giving them a decent education. That will keep us safer than sending weapons and money to militaries around the world.
Yeah, I think that pressure is going to come. It's already started, and we'll see more of it perhaps tonight on this Republican debate stage. For now, Phyllis, we'll leave it there. We'll check back in with you a little bit further down the road to see how this thing is hopefully coming to an end, if not an end, certainly a ceasefire. Phyllis, thanks for your time. All the best to you.
Forward to it. Thanks.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward. Stay with us.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The number of people confirmed dead in Lahaina remains at 115, but the number of people considered missing is back to about 1,100. That's according to the FBI's official list, which fell to about 850 people earlier.